300 COVID-19 Quarantine Act related charges have been dropped just like that, thanks to many of you who got behind a great team of lawyers at the Democracy Fund and those Canadians that stood up and said enough is enough.
This should have been carved out as a reasonable explanation, right? Like, I mean, you need to be able to go on an urgent basis to look after a family member. A couple of weeks later, I received in my email a Crown-issued state of proceeding.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News. And do you remember not too long ago when the government was trying to convince us that some sort of normal, their new normal, that it would ever be normal, to fine or sometimes arrest people who were simply engaging in mobility rights, whether that be traveling back to home safely without wanting to be confined to some sort of COVID jail, for which they were referring to as a quarantine hotel, or trying to leave the country. We were essentially trapped if you were among those modern day leopards who did not engage with the medical tyranny that said, get this jab or else. But there were some Canadians and a lot of British Columbians who said, no, I'm not going to play this game. A couple like Robert and Jamie Lieb, who I interviewed before because they were wondering if they were going to be on the hook for a $25,000 collection of fines for simply coming to and from their two residents, one in the US and one here in British Columbia. But I got good news for freedom fighters. Thanks to many of you who went to fightvaccinepassports.com and generously donated towards many cases, and this is an example of such, we have a big win for you. Our friends at the Democracy Fund charity who have taken those donations to provide people like the Liebs, and in this case, at least 200 clients, which was a collective amount of 300 fines, have delivered a big win. All of those fines have been dropped. So you're about to hear from the lawyer on the case as well as the Liebs. And before I jump to that, I just want to let you know that if you want to continue to support those who are still being represented in ongoing cases fighting for freedom in Canada, please continue to donate what you can at fightvaccinepassports.com.
As you stated, you would rather revoke your citizenship.
Correct. I will never do an RICAM.
Okay.
Because I worked in China for 15 years and I know exactly where this is heading. Okay. So I will never let you track me on my phone.
Do you want to start feeling like your pre-COVID self again? You're not alone. The wellness company's Spike Support Formula is an all-natural supplement to help people do just that. It was created by cardiologist Peter McCullough and his expert team of doctors to help the people experiencing effects from COVID and the you-know-what. Go to twccanada.health/rebel today. All right, time for a good news story, my favorite type to bring you. And joining us now is in-house counsel with our friends at the Democracy Fund charity, Adam Blake Gallipo. And very happy to see you two again. We've got Robert and Jamie Lieb. Now, I'm going to start with you two. Last time we talked, you were facing $25,000 for an epic standoff that you did trying to come back from the States to visit your vacation home in Penticton, I believe. And then you had at least two more standoffs. Can you briefly explain those to the viewers before we get to the win?
Sure. So it was June of 2022. We came through first, had a very nice border guard. He did all the normal things, asking us the regular questions. And then all of a sudden it stopped and he starts on all of the COVID questions. And his whole demeanor turned, like he just completely changed from a super nice guy to being very, very hard nosed. I answered back with, these are against my rights. I refuse to answer any of these questions. He then told us we need to go in and talk to public health. And this is in Sumas, Washington, going towards Abbotsford at the Huntington Crossing. So we go in, we see a PHAC person, we talk to him only for a few minutes. And basically what we informed him that we know our rights and we refuse to answer any questions. And we said, are we being detained? And he said, no. And I said, are we free to go? And he said, yes, you are. And we just walked out. And he still had more questions. And we just walked out and I think what really ticked him off was we high-fived each other as we went out the door. So now a couple of weeks later, Father's Day, we came through again, and same border guard, same PHAC person. This time they held our US passports and sent us in. So they would not release our passports. And now we were there for over an hour, and he just kept reading us the riot act and going through all the things. We kept answering back that this is against our rights, and we're not going to answer any of his questions. And we didn't do a RIVE-PAN. We didn't do a COVID test. We're not vaccinated. We're not following any of this. He then proceeded to give us almost $25,000 for the fines, sent us on our way. Then there's a third altercation on September 6th. I had to go down and pick up our truck so we could bring our boat back from Penticton. So when I did that, I came through on my own. I came through in the morning, and same thing I had, but this time I would not give him my passport. I gave him a photocopy of it. And I said, I'm happy to give you the real documentation. However, I do not give you permission to hold that document or give it to PHAC. At that time, he became quite frustrated with me. Also, he saw that I had a GoPro mounted in my window that was blinking red at him. So he was quite agitated, but continually I stayed my ground. And in the end, I said, am I free to go? And he said, did I say you were free to go? I said, no, I just want to make sure I'm not being detained because I'm going to drive away. I'm not going in to talk to PHAC. And he said, well, you need to. And I said, no, I do not. Am I free to go? He said, yes, you are, but we could arrest you or we could give you further tickets, and we will. And I held up my 6 tickets that I already had and said, well, I'm not really afraid of your tickets at this point. And again, he became very agitated. I said, okay, I'm leaving now and I'm going to drive down the road. I will not be going into PHAC. He said, well, we could ticket you further. I go, you don't even know where I live, but okay. And off I went. And I never heard from them again. There was no altercation. I wasn't arrested, and I didn't get any tickets in the mail.
Wow. Now, here you are, you worked hard. I know some of your business was affected by COVID lockdowns, and you're getting to this retirement stage faced with these whopping fines. Some of them, I think, each are close to thousands of 6,000 each close to. And then you have people, a lot of viewers of Rebel News come together and donate on your behalf and others like you to the Democracy Fund for amazing counsel like Adam, who's joined us here, who is part of a challenge to close to 300 fines that have been dropped. Tell us a little bit about what those types of fines were. Were they all similar to Robert and Jamie's situation or a little different?
Absolutely. So to briefly summarize, people were being fined under the Quarantine Act for crossing into Canada between 2020 and 2022, give or take, predominantly for 2 reasons. The first was a failure to show proof of vaccination or an adequate PCR test at the border. The second predominant reason was failure to complete the ArriveCAN app. And what's notable about these 2 fines, these 2, breaches that are the most common, is that they held a $5,750 price tag for breaching, and that's minimum. That's mandatory minimum. And all of this, this is for the, all of this is troubling on its own, but this doesn't include the fact that the orders in council were constantly changing, and this is on a month-to-month basis. So, roughly speaking, every 30 days, you get a new series, an updated series of regulations under Section 58 of the Quarantine Act that you need to follow and be knowledgeable about prior to crossing back into Canada. So this is a challenge for me. This is a challenge for lawyers who we spend our time looking at. This is a challenge for judges, let alone people who are just trying to get by. So now to go on to specifically about the Leaves, which I think was the second part of your question, their matter was uniquely troubling, and that was in large part, I guess, due to the quantity with which they were ticketed. Right, you're looking at between he and his wife, as a result of a single transaction, a single border crossing, they were fined just under $25,000 over 6 tickets. And just to provide some context there and some background, they are United States residents now. They're returning to Canada, where his father lives, Mr. Lieb's father lives, in part to assist him because he's 92 years of age and has a litany of very serious medical conditions. And so upon their return, they were ticketed for both not completing the ArriveCAN properly and not having an adequate PCR test. Now, in addition to those, which were the most common, they were also ticketed. They also received 2 additional tickets, which is subject to Section 15 Sub 1 of the Quarantine Act for not answering questions put to them by a quarantine officer. And each of these tickets carries a $1,000 fine. It's $948 and change. So they each received 3. You do the math, you're just under $25,000. So we entered into discussions with the Crown. We cited the serious reasons behind them entering into Canada. Namely to assist his very ill and very elderly father this should have been carved out as a reasonable explanation, right? Like, I mean, you need to be able to go on an urgent basis to look after a family member. A couple of weeks later, I received in my email a Crown issued stay of proceeding. Now, I can't say with 100% certainty that this was stayed because of the pretrial discussions we had with the Crown, but I have my suspicions that was the case.
So now back to you, the Liebs. Describe what it felt like to get this news after so many battles just to get to your own property. What was it like to hear, you know what, it looks like it's all been dropped? Mhm.
So when finally, Adam and I talked from time to time about what was happening, and then we're here in Penticton, and I see my phone light up with his name, and I thought, okay, I hope it's good news, and sure enough, it was. So yeah, we're very happy. We're very happy, especially my wife. She thinks I'm kind of crazy when it comes to stuff, but I've just always been the person that I believe in standing up for my rights. We had similar issues in the US because we tried to run a business through COVID.
Mhm.
And they tried to shut us down, and I had to stand up to them as well with the same thing. I had the government threatening us with fines and shutting our business down. And so now that business is moving to Tennessee. They'll be completely out of Washington by the end of the year. So good for
Yeah.
them. Good job.
It's nice to bring you a good news report like this, but you should know that there are still many clients the Democracy Fund is fighting to preserve democracy and freedom in Canada. And they can't do any of that without your help. Please continue to donate what you can at fightvaccinepassports.com. Not a penny goes to Rebel News. It all goes to cover the legal expenses involved in helping many Canadians who said enough is enough. Go to fightvaccinepassports.com. If you want to continue to support those who are still being represented in ongoing cases fighting for freedom in Canada, please continue to donate what you can at fightvaccinepassports.com.